ways. It's not just the clergy sexual abuse and the cover-up and denial of clergy sexual abuse that makes Unitarian Universalism unsafe and also leads to various kinds of perversion of justice. However, we're sticking to the child abuse theme because of the fact that it is Child Abuse Prevention Month. And, that being said, there are non-sexual forms of child abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse, even physical abuse that doesn't involve sexual abuse. Actually, speaking of physical abuse that doesn't involve necessarily sexual abuse, Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein herself once blogged about how she kicked one of her parishioners' children in the rear end hard and twice because he was caught shoplifting. Like, she openly blogged about this. So here's a Unitarian Universalist minister openly blogging about the fact that she quite violently kicked the parishioner's child in the butt twice and hard, according to her own testimony, because he was caught shoplifting. That's physical abuse of a child, and it's totally inappropriate for a Unitarian Universalist minister or any other member of the clergy of any religious community to inflict corporal punishment on a child that is not their own. It's even open to debate as to whether they can inflict corporal punishment on their own children, but to, according to her own testimony, kick this guy, this young boy, in the buttocks twice and hard, is just beyond the pale, and it is physical abuse of a child, and to some extent also, psychological and emotional abuse thrown in there. So yeah, there's some non-sexual child abuse committed by Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein herself, who also happens to be one of the most verbally abusive Unitarian Universalist ministers I've ever had the misfortune to run across. I thankfully haven't had any real life contact with Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein, but I've seen plenty of evidence of her verbal and psychological abuse on the internet, and I can assure you that it's not all of it's directed at me. A good chunk of, in fact, I'd say, she's gone out of her way to insult and verbally abuse quite a number of other people, and including a fair number of Unitarian Universalists. I've seen plenty of evidence of that. But again, coming back to the child abuse, so there's the physical abuse of a young boy by Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein. In the last year or so, Reverend Ronald Eugene Robinson was found by, I believe, Homeland Security to be involving himself in online child pornography activities. In other words, not just looking at child porn per se, but actually participating in sort of live streamed chat rooms of child abuse. And he was arrested, I believe it was last year, might have been the year before, and essentially he pleaded guilty, so he's in jail for child porn activities. There's also, what's his name, Stephen Craig Bullite, Unitarian Universalist Sunday school teacher out in Oregon, who adopted a young boy and proceeded to use this young boy as a sex slave. And he's also known to have involved himself in various other abuse of children, sexual abuse of children, not just the young boy he adopted.
No way.
What?
No way.
What do you mean, no way?
What you're saying.
Oh, I can assure you that there's some very, very serious problems with the Unitarian Universalist Church, including sexual abuse of children.
Universalist?
What?
Is this Unitarian Universalist?
It's affiliated with the Unitarian Universalist Church.
Okay, I'll look it up on the web.
So, this woman's in denial, no way. In fact, what she's looking at is a picket sign that says unsafe sect and Unitarian Universalist perversion of justice. Sucks you, asterisk you. So, she didn't even see the signs about child sex abuse. Well, she might have. She might have seen my signs about misuse of blasphemy law. She could have seen that on her way here. So let's have another look at them. So she could very well have seen this Unitarian Universalists misuse blasphemy law to cover up and deny pedophilia and rape. And her response is no way. She just can't believe that Unitarians would do such a thing. But unfortunately, I can prove beyond reasonable doubt that Unitarian Universalists do exactly that. And I can also prove beyond reasonable doubt that the church locally, the Unitarian Church of Montreal, has helped the Unitarian Universalist Association to cover up and deny these things, if only by shutting down my protest and erasing my chalk slogans and so on and so forth. They certainly haven't done anything to condemn the abuse of children or the cover up and denial of abuse of children. They are totally complicit in terms of complicit silence, but it goes beyond complicit silence. They have actively tried to shut down my protest against clergy abuse. In fact, as recently as December, the mayor of Notre-Dame-de-Grâce, Côte-de-Neige, Notre-Dame-de-Grâce, Sue Montgomery, Montreal Unitarian, thought it'd be a good idea to have me arrested for alleged criminal harassment on the flimsiest of grounds, really no valid grounds at all. But the purpose was to have court conditions placed on me that would prevent me from protesting here. So my protest was shut down for a little over 2 months as a result of the court conditions placed on me as a result of Sue Montgomery pretending to be very, very frightened of me, even though I've never said or done anything that should cause a reasonable person to be very frightened of me. I've never made any threats against Sue Montgomery. I've never done anything that should cause her to fear for her personal safety, and yet she, I believe, misused her influence as mayor to persuade the police to have me arrested. I don't think an ordinary citizen would have been able to get me arrested for criminal harassment. It's only because she managed to get herself elected as the mayor of Côte-de-Neige, Notre-Dame-de-Grâce, and also get herself appointed as the deputy mayor of Montreal by Valerie Plante, that Sue Montgomery was able to translate that political power into having the police arrest me on the flimsiest of grounds. Really, no, as I said, no grounds whatsoever. I mean, I've read the 5-page police report that Sue Montgomery wrote, and there's really nothing in it that can, justify arresting me for criminal harassment. It's basically very, very clear that Sue just wanted to shut me up and get conditions placed on me that would prevent me from protesting. Thankfully, my lawyer was able to get the conditions modified and reduced and allowing me to protest. That got Sue a little bit upset, and she came here on the 18th of March and tried to get me arrested for breaching conditions and kicked down all of my picket signs while calling the police, to try and get them to arrest me for allegedly violating conditions. But I'd already had my conditions modified, and I'm quite sure Sue was aware of that. I don't think she came to the church not knowing that my conditions had actually been modified. There's clear evidence that she was aware that there had been changes to the conditions. And nonetheless, she essentially tried to provoke me into reacting to her vandalism of my picket sign, so that she could then, claim, well, I had, directly communicated with her, and she could pretend to be afraid or whatever. But there was no sign of fear at all in Sue. Quite the opposite. She was basically being a belligerent jerk, if you don't mind my saying so. I'm actually being polite when I say jerk. So, yeah, we're coming up to the end of a half-hour segment of video here. The battery's almost depleted, so we shall let the next minute or two expire, and then we will put in a fresh battery and continue to protest for maybe another half hour or so. There's not a whole lot of people showing up. This is a fundraising event. I was expecting maybe dozens of people to show up, possibly even 100 or two, but it's not looking that way. It's not looking like they're getting a huge turnout for this fundraiser. Obviously, one of the reasons I wanted to be here was so that however many dozens or hundreds of people came for the fundraiser would see my signs, but only a small number of people have seen my signs. Well, since it's quiet, I'm going to end this clip just a little early and put in a fresh battery and start up again while there's nobody around.